So still a lot of social unrest currently going on in America right now. Couple of headlines have come our way. Let's start here. Let's start in the world of NASCAR first.
Okay.
So NASCAR has officially made the decision to ban the Confederate flag. Now, personally on my end, just being upfront, I'm okay with it. I have no issue with them doing that, making that decision. I know there's a lot of people that are hung up on it. To me, it's not that big a deal. Bubba Wallace, so the only professional African-American like NASCAR racer, he's also taking a social stand as well, as his car that he drove in this most recent race wasn't, like traditional NASCAR car. It wasn't loaded up with the sponsorships, the advertisements. It was just loaded up with the simple message, Black Lives Matter. And most importantly, in terms of design details, also had a black hand and a white hand interlocked on the front hood of the car. So, NASCAR, has always been the sport that's been kind of dragged through the mud in terms of like its reputation, particularly its fan base. And it's interesting to see them take these stands. What did you think of NASCAR's most recent announcements, Dre?
So me personally, as an African-American, or at least half African-American, right? So I'm half Asian, half African-American. I'm really supportive of it. So I think that it's a stance that NASCAR is saying, hey, we understand most of our fan base, and I don't think this is controversial in any way. It's a lot of Southerners, right? So we think about Florida, Georgia, all of those are the main NASCAR sort of states, even though like even Indiana, right? Indianapolis, I would still say, that's sort of the demographic they're going for. And obviously, as you can tell, there's only one black NASCAR driver, like you said. So it's not quite a sport in which you have a whole lot of black people or the black community with eyes on the sport. Yet NASCAR was willing to come out and say, hey, we still believe strongly enough in our stance that we are going to stand in solidarity with African Americans and those who feel marginalized here in America. And so we are removing the Confederate flag. And so I'm 100% supportive of it. Even if I wasn't an African American, and even if I didn't necessarily support the Black Lives Matter movement or protest, I still would agree with the way that NASCAR is doing things. And just to be honest, like from my personal point of view, I do find the flag to be somewhat offensive. I understand people are saying, hey, I'm from the South and this is part of my heritage. But at the same time, we have to understand that NASCAR is a private company. They can do whatever they want. And if that's one of the rules that they're going to make, I support them as a private company doing that. And like I said, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the message of solidarity that they're giving, and I appreciate their support for Bubba Wallace, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I'm glad you gave your thoughts on the Confederate flag. My thought on it has always been, and I don't necessarily think that people who own the Confederate flag are by any means necessarily 100% racist. But I definitely think you're an idiot. But I definitely think you're an idiot if you have it. And why I say that is, yes, I've heard the heritage debate plenty of times. I've heard the cultural debate plenty of times. But like you said, for yourself, what that flag necessarily means. I mean, the most ardent defenders will say the Confederacy was a state rights issue. Well, the states' rights issue was centered around slavery. And I don't think there's any really getting around it. Like if you listen to a lot of like the people who made up the Confederacy or brought the flag to be, they were straight up about it too. They were like, this is the issue that we're focusing on, and this is why we're going to war over it. And for me, I think that the Confederate flag does have a place in a history museum. Yeah. I think we move past that. I was about to say you don't see people still wearing swastikas and stuff like that. But for the most part, like that's been retired in places like Germany because of what it means, to a certain sect of people. Like wearing a swastika is similar to wearing a Confederate flag, they're one and the same in some people's eyes. And I think we should realize that whenever we have this debate, even when it comes to Confederate statues. And I don't want to disparage necessarily everyone who was on the Confederacy side. I'm sure that there was some people who thought of it in a more noble pursuit than just going for slavery. But at the same time, a lot of people didn't, like even like I know there was a lot of controversy over like statues for like Robert E. Lee, right? For example. And there's some people that say like, yeah, he was a gentleman, but at the same time, there was also like there was also some quotes out there from him too that let you know where his stance was on the slavery issue and whether he wanted to keep it going. So in terms of the flag, in terms of the statues, I do think there is a point that we don't necessarily have to keep up these monuments or these shrines to them. They could be in history museums because that's what they're for, you know? They're that opportunity to learn where we came from and how far we've grown, how much we've grown as a society to get past that. But not on public display, not to be revered by any means, and certainly not to be protested, counter protested, you know, to keep them. Because, you know, you also had like, I know there was like a racer too that said he was going to leave NASCAR because they were taking this stance. He was also, I think, a minor league NASCAR driver, which is kind of crazy to me because I didn't know there was a minor league of NASCAR, but hey, to each his own. I just think that was a little bit of a ridiculous thing by him. But, you know, like you said, private company, his private emotions, if that's seriously how he feels about it, fine. You know, do what you want to do. It's a free society, but I know how we feel about it. I know how you feel about it. So I'm okay with it. I have no issue with them taking this action.
Yeah, and the other thing the other way I guess I see it is the Confederate flag. What value does it add to a NASCAR race in the first place anyways, right? Like I can see them, you know, okay, we want the regular American flag. Yeah, that's the flag of our country. That's to be respected. Yes, there's, you know, it not only represents law enforcement, first responders, but the troops as well, right? That's been the big argument and the big reason people have been so against Colin Kaepernick and, you know, the NFL's kneeling protest, or at least how it started in the NFL. But the Confederate flag, like, let's be honest, like that was the treasonous, you know, we're going to start a war, right? Like, so it was literally un-American to fight an entire war. And then, you know, you're going to try to represent that flag. So I just don't see any value that a Confederate flag brings to NASCAR. And I don't see how it changes the dynamic of the race, right? Like I understand, yes, there's, you know, the national anthem, and I could see people's complaints on that. Like, yes, you know, I don't like the kneeling during the national anthem. Okay, I can understand why, right? Like that to me, that to a lot of people means something, right? To them, it represents people fighting for their freedom. But a Confederate flag, there really isn't a whole lot of value. They fought against the Union, right? And like you said, a small subset of the country.
I mean, you look at Drew Brees' statement last week in terms of like what he said the national anthem meant to him, right? He saw it as a sign of unity, right? Uniting under the stars and stripes.
Yeah.
There is nothing but division when it comes to the Confederate flag. It literally represents a division in our country that almost split us in two permanently. And thankfully, because of the stars and stripes, we're now unified together. I know we don't always agree all the time. I know we're always at each other's necks, seemingly every single day of 2020. But guys, like we are worlds better than we were 150 years ago, because that's the U.S. The Confederacy was put to bed, and that flag should have been put to bed when that happened as well. I mean, that's how I feel about it. You know, I mean, like I said, I don't think if you necessarily have that flag on your wall, you're racist, but I think you're an idiot. And I'm just being straight up about it. If you disagree with my thoughts on it, fine. But I think that you are just being this fantasy you created in your head. Like it's almost revisionist history to have the Confederate flag in my mind.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I'm glad, like I said, NASCAR is moving forward. And what I'm really glad on their stance is they understand, like I alluded to earlier, they understand their fan base. They know the majority of their fan base is in the southern parts of the United States. And it's, let's be honest, majority white, you know, viewers and fans. And yet they're still saying, hey, we're willing to take this step and go this far. And so I really appreciate it. I know NASCAR is probably thinking like, hey, this could potentially hurt our pockets, right? But still, at the end of the day, some things are more important than profit and more important than revenue. And I think NASCAR is taking the right stance in this.
Hey, they've come a long way since the Kyle Larson controversy. What was that, just literally 2 months back? We're talking about that.
Yeah, literally, we were, you know, this is one of the major professional sports in which you still have white people using, you know, a hard R N-word, right, on, you know, national television. Like, and that was a huge controversy. And I think that might have also led into NASCAR's decision of like, hey, look, like we know that this stuff is still going on, right? and the whole Kyle Larson thing, that feeds into the stereotype that your typical NASCAR racer, NASCAR fan, somebody associated with NASCAR, is a racist, which I don't think so, right? Like, I don't think in general NASCAR fans are racist.
It's a stereotype. And
But
we all have stereotypes we have to overcome too. I mean, you're talking about a podcast that literally has 2 minorities on it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to battle stereotypes each day, but I think we overcome it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we do well.